All right. So we're going to cover three things. I've got about 15 minutes to do a 30-minute talk, so that means I'm going to talk twice as fast. Sorry about that. We're going to cover AI. Everybody's going to go away understanding what AI is and what AI isn't. We're going to talk about innovation, how we can bring people and technology together to do amazing things. And we'll also talk about the end of the world, which is always a nice subject at the end of a conference. A little bit about me. I do two things. I run a master's program in artificial intelligence in UCL. About 100 students every year that go out there and apply emerging technologies to solving business problems. So I've got a really good idea about where organizations are at in their digital journey. I also wear an evil corporate hat where I run a company called Satalia, and we build AI solutions for some of the largest organizations across the globe. Before we get into definitions of AI, I want to gauge the intelligence of the audience. This is going to be very interactive, so I'm going to ask you some questions. You have to answer these questions, okay? So the first question is this. What is that? What does that say? I know you can do. If you're normal, what does it say? Okay, and what does this say? 12, 13, 14. You can see that the data that's going into your eyes is the same data, and you're giving it a different meaning based on its context. And if I asked you what this said, what does this say? John read the letter to Mary. John read the letter to Mary. If I want you to picture in your mind the scene, John read the letter to Mary. John read the letter to Mary. What picture do you have in your mind? John read the letter to Mary. Not a trick question, huh? You've got a guy reading a letter out loud to a girl. So actually, John could be reading a letter that was sent to Mary, or John could be reading a letter that could be addressed to Mary. John could be reading the alphabet, A, B, C, D, to Mary. John could be reading the letter of the law to Mary. John could be reading a book called The Letter to Mary. John could be reading a book called The Letter to Mary. John could be reading 4 words on a piece of paper, The Letter to Mary. This can be interpreted in many, many different ways, and we will all go away with a picture in our mind of what we think is correct, and we're probably wrong. And one of the big challenges we have in computer science is taking this stuff, this data, and trying to figure out what does it actually mean. That's our first challenge. Right, so I'm going to ask you some maths questions now, and your job is to answer these maths questions as fast as possible. I don't know if you've read the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, but Daniel Kahneman argues that we have a fast brain and a slow brain. For this, I want you to use your fast brain. So the first question is, what is 2 times 2? Good. What is 14 times 763? Okay. First one was fast brain, second one was your slow brain. This is going to make more sense later on. If I said to you the combined price of a bat and a ball is €1.10, and the bat is €1 more than the ball, how much is the ball? 5 cents. You knew the answer already, you cheat, didn't you? Most of you probably are thinking 10 cents. It's not. The bat is €1.05. The ball is 5 cents. The combined price is €1.10. So I can give you lots and lots of these questions, and I promise you will get them wrong. So let me ask you this. Imagine these are staff members. Imagine we know everything about these staff members. We know whether they can fly or swim or walk or whatever. And we want to organize these staff members in a way that satisfies some rules. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do this, but can anybody tell me how many possible combinations there are of these 5 staff members? So I'm looking at one combination. I flip 2 around. I get another combination. I flip another 2 around. I get another combination. How many possible combinations are there of these? Yeah, 5 factorial, 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So there's 120 possible combinations. Some will satisfy the rules, some won't. One will be the best one. Let's make the problem a bit more complicated. 15 staff members, don't say 15 factorial. How many possible combinations are there? What does your fast brain say? Huh? Over 1 trillion possible combinations. To expect a human to solve this problem, you're wasting your time. One rule to take away with you today, anything more than 7, don't use a human for. Okay? So whether you're allocating marketing money, whether you're allocating resources, anything more than 7, humans are rubbish. And actually, industry don't have problems of this size, they have problems of this size. 500, can anybody tell me how many possible combinations there are? So it's a number that looks like this. And just to put this number into context, this is how many atoms there are in the universe. Maybe to give you some more context, one of our clients is PwC. They have 5,000 auditors in the UK they're trying to allocate to projects. 5,000 factorial. Yeah, don't use humans to solve these problems. Okay, so when I build systems, AI systems, to solve problems in industry, these systems usually have these 3 components. So the first component is data, and everybody's going on their digital transformation, trying to get all of their data together, which is great. Everybody's now super excited about this, which is finding insights in data, trying to find patterns in data. So we're using machine learning, data science, statistics to try and know things about the world. But actually, very, very little investment is going into the top part. Usually humans do the top part, which is around decision making. You want to use machine learning, data science to try and know things about the world. Then you want to use these technologies, the top optimization technologies, discrete mathematics, to be able to then make decisions based on those insights. Decision making is incredibly complicated, and humans do it very badly. And if I build a system that looks like this, if I build a system that I give data to, and it goes through a model, it makes a decision, and tomorrow I give it the same data, it makes the same decision, you have automation. Automation is great because this can often solve problems significantly better than humans, but what is the definition of stupidity? Can anybody tell me the definition of stupidity? It's doing the same thing over again and expecting a different answer. So this automation is stupid. Right? And actually, any company that touches this technology stack is calling themselves an AI company. It's okay, you get more clients, you get more VC funding, but this is not AI. This is automation. There's actually two definitions of AI. The first definition, I think, is weak and popular, which is getting computers to do things that humans do. Getting computers to do things that humans can do. So I guess humans are the most intelligent thing that we know in the universe. And when we start to get machines to recognize objects and images, know that you're male, you're female, you're happy or sad, corresponding natural language, when we start to get machines to do things that only humans used to be able to do, we then call that intelligence, because humans are the most intelligent thing in the universe. I would argue that humans are very good at finding patterns in about 4 dimensions, and we're very good at solving problems up to about 7. Computers can find patterns in thousands of dimensions, and they can solve problems with thousands of moving parts. So benchmarking machine intelligence against human intelligence is a very silly thing to do. The better definition of AI comes from the definition of intelligence. There's a very elegant definition for intelligence, which is this. It's goal-directed adaptive behavior. Goal-directed in the sense we're trying to achieve an objective. We're trying to allocate our resources to achieve some sort of objective. Behavior is how quickly can we move towards that objective, how quickly can we allocate our resources to achieve our goal. But the key word in this definition for me is adaptive. If you build a system that makes a decision, then learns about whether that decision is good or bad, and then changes its own understanding of the world so that tomorrow it makes a better decision, I would argue that you have AI. Okay, and I haven't seen a successful, complex system that does this in production in my life. Does anybody remember the Microsoft Twitter bot that became sexist and racist very quickly? I don't know if you remember that bot. Microsoft launched a bot on Twitter. Lots of teenagers decided to tease it, and it became a Nazi bot very quickly. This is what happens when you put adaptive systems in production. It's very, very, very difficult to build adaptation into production. Okay, 2 flavors of AI. Hopefully, most of you will recognize this painting. So AI in the 60s and 70s would look like this. This is Socrates before he drinks hemlock and kills himself. Socrates is famous for inspiring the Socratic method. So if I say to you, Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, I can infer that Socrates is mortal. And it didn't really scale. So in the 80s and 90s, a new type of AI came along that's modeled on how biology learns. And this is the brain of a bumblebee. My PhD was trying to model the brain of a bumblebee. Bumblebees have 1 million neurons. Their brain can fit on the end of a needle, and bumblebees do amazing things. They navigate 3D worlds, they talk to each other, they solve problems, they don't handle windows very well, but ultimately, they're very smart creatures. And the question was, can you take the brain of a bee and put it into a machine? And 12 years ago, when I was doing my PhD, this was impossible. It was impossible to model 1 million neurons. But about 9 years ago, a new paradigm in this technology came along called deep learning that allows us to now model brains with hundreds of millions of neurons. And we can now teach these brains to do things that only humans used to be able to do. And this is what we're calling AI. I would argue that these technologies are great at finding patterns in the world. They're great at knowing that you're male, you're female, you're happy or sad. But these are not good technologies to make decisions. You need to harmonize this with this. Know things about the world and then reason with that knowledge. And that's actually a very, very difficult thing to do. And then build your system to adapt itself in production. So this is where it gets a bit weird. If this is the bounds of human ability, I would argue that we can almost take anything that a human does, any specific task that a human does, and we can build a system that can outperform that human almost anything. But it's very inefficient to build individual systems that solve individual problems. It's very costly, it's expensive. So the question is, can we build one system that can do many things? You are all general intelligence. You are one system that can do many, many things. And actually, if you take this to its extreme, then it's predicted that within our lifetime, we are going to build a brain that's smarter than us in every single possible way. This is the last invention that humanity will create. It's predicted it's going to happen around 2050, and nobody knows if this is going to be the most glorious thing that happens to us or our biggest existential threat. I think it's our biggest existential threat, and we're trying to figure out how do we solve this problem. If you ask Elon Musk will say this has already happened, and we're living in a simulation created by a superintelligence in a different universe. Before we build a superintelligence, we're having to build systems that are making decisions about our everyday lives. I'm sure you've all heard this problem before. It's called the trolley problem. So I'm in my driverless car. In front of me is a kid. To the left are two adults, and to the right is a cliff. And the car can't stop. Who do you kill? So who would kill the kid? Nobody. Who would kill you? Nobody. And who would kill the two adults? Nobody. Okay, so the problem with this is that we have been philosophizing and pontificating about this stuff for 3,000 years, and we still cannot agree as a species what the right answer is. But now we're having to build systems that are making these decisions. And I heard that one day we'll have an ethical setting in our car where we say we want to kill grandmas over cats, which is quite... I heard that one day we'll actually create a digital twin of ourselves, and this twin will know all about us. It will know our preferences and all of this kind of stuff. And the digital twin will make decisions based on how we feel. And I actually heard that concept could replace politicians, which I don't have time to talk about, which is always a good thing. But if I build a robot and I say to the robot, your job is to eradicate cancer. What is the easiest way of eradicating cancer? It's eradicating humanity, exactly. So when we build these systems and when we give them an objective, we've got to be very careful about building a framework to make sure that they don't misbehave. And ethical AI or explainable algorithms is very, very complicated. All right, so let's talk about innovation. Just take a moment and look at this screen. I'm sure you don't have any problems like this in your company, but this is a hierarchy. Listen, it's not a picture of Satalia, although most people do sell drugs to each other. That's a very common thing. Hierarchies breed certain types of relationships, and I would argue that this is completely dysfunctional if you want to build adaptive systems or adaptive organizations. In fact, over the next decade, this technology stack will be commoditized. We already have access to free compute and lots of data. All of the tools you need to build brains, millions of neurons in size, they're all free. And at some point, somebody will commoditize optimization and somebody will commoditize self-learning. The battleground for companies is not technology, it's talent. How do you attract, motivate, retain talent to build innovations to enable your organization to adapt to a changing world? Adaptation is synonymous with intelligence. And there's a very good book on motivation by Dan Pink. He said there are three things that motivate people: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is giving people the freedom to do what they want. Mastery is giving them the ability to become really good at what they want. And purpose is giving them something higher to align themselves with. And so your first challenge as an organization is how do you attract and retain talent? And I would argue that if you're not sexy or you don't have interesting problems, then you're not going to attract talent. Okay, you have to be honest with yourself, and that will determine whether you work with third-party vendors, buy technology off the shelf, etc. But once you have attracted talent, you then need to create a culture that enables that talent to thrive. And over the past several decades, we've seen a flattening of organization. We've seen the removal of middle managers because these companies tend to be a little bit more efficient. But I would argue this is still broken. So I am trying to create a completely decentralized organization. We have 120 people in Satalia. We have no managers, no hierarchies, no KPIs. Everybody's free to do whatever they want. They can work on whatever they want, however they want, wherever they want. And we're trying to essentially build an organization that operates like a swarm. That uses AI to facilitate things like paying people and project allocation. And my goal is to scale this not to 1,000 people, it's to scale it to a planet. My goal over the next 30 years is to decentralize the planet. And that might sound a bit crazy, but one thing that we do in Satalia is that we ask everybody every year to make public recommendations for their salary. So you would all publicly declare what you want to be paid. Then everybody votes on whether those salaries should be reduced or increased or kept the same. And we use machine learning to determine how many votes one person has for another. So if I've worked very closely with you over the past year, if I'm very knowledgeable about your domain, I will have more votes for your salary than other people. So we decentralize, in this case, salary setting to people who are closest to you. One interesting outcome of that, imagine all of these dots here are people in my company. It turns out that females tend to undervalue themselves. So this blue one is one of our females. She had 429 votes to approve her salary, 36 votes to reduce, 280 votes to increase her salary. Out of everybody in the company, she had the most votes to increase her salary. So she went away, she came back with a new salary. She got 494 votes to approve, 0 votes to reduce, 210 votes to increase her salary. So still, she was undervaluing herself. Still, she needed to go away. And we can use these ideas, we can augment human intelligence with machine intelligence to decentralize decision-making. And this is a very exciting future, but it relies you to have essentially a digital twin of your organization. This is a digital twin of Satalia. I can see that if one of these people leave, we've got a silo between two parts of our company. I can identify people who might leave the company before they know they will leave the company, which is interesting ethical decision. I know I can find secret lovers in my company as well. But what organizations are trying to ultimately do is create a digital simulation of their organization so that they can ask questions and they can adapt that organization to a changing world. So let's talk about the end of the world quickly. So I'm sure that you've all seen this episode. So if you haven't seen the series Black Mirror on Netflix, I'd highly recommend this series. So you don't have to watch every single episode. They're all different. This particular episode is a dystopian future where we are all living in a world where we're rating each other. So you would be rating me now out of 5, and I'd be rating you back to see if you're awake. You'd be rating the taxi driver and rating the people that are making you coffee. And what that does is it creates a social score. And that social score determines whether you have faster internet and better hotel rooms and all of this kind of stuff. This is a dystopian future. This is being rolled out across China. So China are implementing a social citizen score. We think it won't happen in the West. It will. I know organizations, I know companies that are encouraging all of their employees to have biometrics attached to them. This is not a ring. This is a sensor that's collecting my heart rate, my temperature, my location. We're going to be giving our data to organizations to enable them to essentially help us make better decisions. The problem is if your organization or your country, if their decision or their goal is to maximize profit, to maximize GDP, then ultimately you're going to be squeezing more and more out of those people. And I think that this could create a dystopian future. So let me ask you a very quick question. So it's easy to point fingers at Facebook, so sorry about this. But Facebook's primary goal is to maximize profit. That's their goal. And Facebook, if they can't maximize profit by coming up with new ideas and creating that 5% return to their shareholders through innovation, then what tends to happen is organizations make bad decisions. They make decisions that compromise their users, compromise the environment, compromise their employees. So this impulse for short-term 5% returns means that companies are making very bad decisions that I think are creating an unsustainable future for our planet. There is no reason at all why we can't have a decentralized Facebook, why there isn't a platform that anybody in the world can contribute to, whether you're a software developer, a designer, an accountant, a human resource expert. Anybody in the world can can contribute to it and be rewarded for that contribution. There's no reason why we can't create that platform. That's what Satalia is trying to create. Facebook have 2 billion users. If each user paid £1 per year, €1 per year, that's 2 billion euros to support a global community of people that are driven to drive forward a platform that connects people as opposed to keeping you addicted to that screen. The longer you look at the screen, the more money Facebook makes. So I think in the next 10 years, if we can build a decentralized platform that allows people to boot up ideas, allow people to gravitate and contribute to those ideas, we'll see companies like Facebook, Airbnb, Uber, many of these companies disappear. So there are 2 things I'm concerned about. I'm just about to close. The first thing I'm concerned about is called the economic singularity. The economic singularity is, at the moment, we're using AI, we're using these technologies to remove tasks, to free people up from their tasks. But at some point, this drive to increase profits, to reduce costs, means that whole jobs are going to be replaced. And I know they are because we build systems that replace jobs. Right? We are on the forefront. And this is a study that was done a few years ago. And it was basically trying to get an understanding about when we were going to get AI to solve some of these problems. And one interesting one here is to beat a human at Go. It was predicted in 2016 we would beat a human at Go in 13 years' time. That happened in 2017. I would argue that if we applied ourselves to any of these things, we're going to be able to beat a human at all of these things. And the problem is if our objective function for humanity is maximizing GDP, if it's squeezing more out of people, then we're going to create an unsustainable future for ourselves because lots and lots of people will lose jobs and we won't have people trained fast enough to get new jobs. So this is a big concern of mine. The second concern I have is that is a concept called the technological singularity, which is where we build a superintelligence smarter than us in every single possible way. And if we are still fighting each other over resources, if we're still fighting each other for GDP, by the time this comes, it's probably going to see us as a threat and remove us from the planet. And I think that would be unfortunate. So for me, the idea of decentralization is how do we unlock the creative potential of the planet, enabling those people to have work, and ultimately getting humanity cooperating towards a common goal so that when this thing comes along, it doesn't remove us from the equation. And so for me, the companies that are going to be successful in the future are not the companies that use the best technologies, actually the companies that are going to have the strongest purpose. I think that purpose is incredibly important. If you want to attract and retain talent, you need to have a strong purpose. Our purpose is to enable everybody to do what they want, and I think that blockchain, AI, decentralized autonomous organizations are an answer for that. So I'm going to stop there. I have three minutes left. Any questions?
There's time to open it up for a couple of questions. Yes. Microphone's coming.
Hi.
Hey.
So it is argued that efficiency in payments can increase the well-being of the general population, but also at the same time, a very big part of our population in the Western world works in banks. So the question is, do we have to outweigh if automation increases efficiency and people lose their jobs with something like a universal basic income, or would the benefit on its own be enough?
Good question. So I'm still undecided about whether UBI, universal basic income, will solve this problem. I would like to think that, I don't think that governments are going to move fast enough to solve these problems. I would like to think that actually it's the private sector that are going to solve it. I really genuinely believe that the next generation, or this generation, this new generation of people are going to have two choices. They're going to choose who to consume from, and they're going to choose who to contribute to. And if you don't have a strong purpose, I would hope that you're going to be starved from that resource. And I think that over the next 5 years, we're going to see much more transparency about the impact that organizations have on our planet, so that it will then make individuals more accountable. So I actually think the private sector will solve this. I actually do think that if you can create a decentralized planet where anybody can boot up ideas and anybody can contribute to them, those technologies, those solutions will become commoditized. So in a future world, there's no reason why we couldn't have a global, I don't know, transportation solution that's essentially a commodity, essentially free. There's no reason why this can't happen. There's no reason why everybody on this planet couldn't have access to nutrition. If we all put our mind to it, everybody could have access to nutrition and not have to starve. It just requires us to have a different objective function. But I think that, again, these technologies, these ideas could help us move towards that world.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
Hi. I'm very intrigued about the ethics of AI, and I can really spend a day questioning you on ethics. But do you really think we are close into setting up the ethics? Or do we hard code, do not kill a human? If that is tried to be changed, destroy yourself?
Yeah, I don't think we can hard code a superintelligence. That's a really great question. One of the things that I've been doing actually over the past year is I've been reading tons. I'm trying to set the ethics of this decentralized platform that I want to scale for a planet. So it's quite important that we get the ethics right. And so over the past year, I've been reading religious texts and ideologies, Taoism, Buddhism. I've been reading corporate values. If you look at the corporate values of the top 500 companies, almost all of them have the word integrity. And so what I've identified, I think, are 4 pillars, 4 ethical pillars. And what we're going to do is we're going to use machine learning, we're going to use natural language processing to read all of these corpuses of text. So we're going to use AI to try and identify if there are common themes that appear across all of these different ideologies. And the nice thing then is that if you can, then you've got a framework that you can hold future AI accountable to. So we're actually just about to go through that process. Well, whether it'll work or not is a different question. But I think there are 4 pillars. Let's see if that AI can find them.
Okay, thank you very much,
Okay,
Daniel, for a very interesting
Thanks.